Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Nibbling. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, I'm going to give you all of the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Let's get it. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. We got Michael in the chat. What a trooper. Still doing podcast and YouTube with a busted knee. Knee is not totally busted. I missed a game. We had a week off at Christmas with how the schedule worked with the arena being closed on the day that we normally play. And then I missed last week, but I think I'm trending towards being in for the upcoming game this Friday. Apparently, one got it checked out. Apparently, there's no dreaded ACL tear or anything crazy. It's just like a bone bruise, and there's swelling inside there, and it's still working its way out. But it's been feeling a little better the last couple of days, so I think I'm trending towards playing in the next game for my team in Beer League. Steve's in here. Happy New Year. Hashtag Zero G Master. What's your take on a Guenther plus E. Carlson trade for Yossi? 1 year league. Already have Marchenko and Marchessault at right wing. Can only start 2 per night. I think I kind of like that. There's maybe some different point setups where I could see it go the other way. It's not, I don't know if it's a dunk, but it's definitely one I'm into. In general, I do think Yossi's a pretty good buy low at the moment. Blake and I talked about Yossi, so I think that's a good shit there. I think I'd go ahead with that one. Toronto Dave's in here. Hashtag 0G. Appreciate you stopping by. Justin, thoughts on Macklin rest of the season? Is the sample size we have enough to consider him the real deal? Metrics have been great. Yeah, I think we do have enough of sample size, and even going back into all of the body of work that we have from him before he got to the NHL, what he's able to do at a young age in the NCAA. You look at any of the analytical models that try to project player performance. He grades out like a superstar, grades out looking like Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews, all these kind of comparables. So absolutely, I think Macklin Celebrini is the real deal. I think really it's just how fast he became the real deal. That's a bit more of a surprise, I guess. But for sure, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, at least. Macklin Celebrini is the real deal. I will say that depending on your fantasy playoffs, you may want to take a look and you may actually want to trade him away. If your fantasy playoffs, I'm going to look this up real quick just so I'm getting this right. But I believe if your fantasy playoffs are weeks 22 to 24, the absolute last games of the season go through Yahoo's week 25. But if you were in a league that's kind of aware of these things and they don't want to play during that last week where a lot of teams are resting star players, and you've got your playoffs weeks 22 through 24, which I think is in more competitive leagues anyway, that's the more common format. So if that's you, then San Jose plays 8 games across those 3 weeks with only one off night. It is the worst schedule, bar none, for weeks 22 through 24 of any team. And so that should actually come into your decision making. But if you have your playoffs weeks 12, if your playoffs are weeks 23 through 25, then you would have 12 games played and 6 off nights from San Jose. So they get a lot out of that last week 25. So take a look at that. And if that matters to you, you may want to consider making a move around Celebrini. Just don't pull a Demko with regards to the knee. Yeah, hopefully I don't have a joint problem or whatever whatever the hell it is that Demko's got going on. CG's in here. Drouin, Bennett, Fiala, Rust, or Ronka rest of season 12 team points. Hard for me to go against Rust right now. Feels like he's just so locked in there no matter what happens there. I just can't imagine a scenario in which he's not top line, top power play playing 20 minutes a night. And you can't really say that for all the other players. I think Fiala probably has a higher ceiling, but less certain deployment. I think Voronkov could also have higher ceiling rest of season, but again, not as sure about the deployment. Steve says, thanks, heal up, feel better. Thank you. CG says, great pod, best fantasy hockey content out there. Appreciate you gassing us up. That actually reminds me, while you're here, I see there's 23 people watching at the moment. If you could click like, subscribe, drop these comments, it helps the live stream gain some traction, I'm told, with the algorithm, for whatever that's worth. Matt's in here. Happy New Year, Nate. You're the man. No, you are. Tofu Tomo, how do you like Voronkov? Worth a pickup over Tippett? Yeah, I mean, with how hot Voronkov is at the moment, underlings are good. I think I would go Voronkov over Tippett at this exact moment in time. Rest of season, it's more of a conversation, but I'm probably still taking Voronkov with the chance that he gonna continues this pace a little bit longer, or maybe even the full season in a best case scenario. CG, is Orlov a hold as fourth final D-man? I think he's a hold for this week. You get 4 games played, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. Carolina plays this week. So it's a hold through this week probably, but I don't think you have to hold him, for the rest of the season. Michael, should I trade Necas for Dougie? That's an interesting one. Dougie has been performing better as of late, and we'll get into that. He's one of the highly requested puzzling players. I think I'd hold on to Necas there, though. I think I feel more confident in his deployment, at least at this point. Yeah, I think I'm holding on to Necas. Ian, to your point on fantasy playoff schedule, would you move Wallman for Doughty? Yeah, if you have San Jose in weeks 22 through 24, going from San Jose to Los Angeles, which plays 11 times with 3 off nights, getting 3 extra games out of Doughty. Yeah, I think 3 extra games out of Doughty is probably better than what you'll get out of Wallman. So it makes some sense. I mean, to some extent, I'd like to see Doughty back and see the deployment, see if they're easing him back, see if there's, I want to see something from Doughty before I make that deal, probably. But I like where you're going with it. I think the logic makes sense. And if Doughty, comes back to where he's at my projection for him, then yeah, I think if he's on power play 1 at my projection, then I do think that would be a good trade. Jordan, hey Nate, thoughts on Braden Point rest of the season? Worried about his shooting percentage and shot volume? Yes. Short answer, yes. I'll throw it in here for now. Braden Point, he's got a goal, 6 points in his last 5, 20 and a half minutes average time on ice, 168 shots for 60, 130 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 65 on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 79 on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. The crazy part is obviously on the season-long stats, a 57-goal, 112-point pace, and that's coming via a really high IPP, really high shooting percentage, and a really high on-ice shooting percentage. So, yeah, that's the part that's a little bit hard to stomach, a little bit hard to really sign off on and say, yeah, absolutely, you can keep this going for the rest of the year. That is going to be it's going to be tough for him to continue. I'm just want to check what I had his IPP at to start the season, because that part might not be so crazy. It might just be the rest of it. It's still like a significant hit that you're probably looking at. So in my projections, I had Braden Point for a 19.2% shooting percentage. So yes, 29.5% is crazy, but you do have to account for the fact that Braden Point is one of the most efficient shooters on a Draisaitl kind of level in terms of the efficiency there. I had him for 13.2% on ice shooting percentage, so it's not maybe as bad as you think, the 15.4% on ice shooting percentage that he's got so far. I did have him down at a 63% IPP, and he's at 74% IPP so far this year. So definitely think that there are probably some things about what Tampa Bay is doing this year that's lending itself specifically to what Braden Point is good at. And so maybe, I wouldn't go exactly back to these numbers to try to project him at those numbers rest of season. But definitely, I think 57 goals is a pretty crazy pace. I think 112 points is a pretty crazy pace. Be much more comfortable with like a 45 to 50 goal pace and like a 90-ish point range, 90 to 95 maybe, as a point pace rest of season. That's kind of where I'd be at on Brayden Point. General question, bench first round pick that's cold for 4 games played mid-draft. I don't think I'm gathering that question. It's probably because I'm not feeling 100% here and I'm struggling to keep up. For 4 games played like a mid-draft pick? I think, I'm guessing, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing this question is in a week-long start-sit scenario. You're asking if you should bench a first-round pick that's cold for getting 4 games played out of somebody that you drafted kind of in the mid-rounds. It's going to depend on who. It's going to depend on their underlying numbers. It's going to depend on a lot more than just what you've given me there. But in general, I don't think you have to play the first round pick every single week. But I would say it's probably more than 9 times out of 10 that you probably should. Ian, I know it's a couple months out, but will you and Blake be doing an episode in the near future on trade targets specific to teams with good/great playoff schedules? I usually do touch on playoff schedules specifically for Patreon members. Patreon members already have access to the schedule tool where I've already broken that down. And then another thing that I'm doing, I was intending to do it tonight, but I'm not feeling 100%, so I'm going to push it to next week. But next week, after puzzling players for the supporters tier, Apples tier, and Geno's tier on Patreon, all 3 tiers, I'm going to be doing a kind of mid-season buys and sells. So if that's of interest to you, $2 a month, you can get in there, you can tune in for that episode, and you can get back out. If you really only want that, that's fine with me. So yeah, that is something that I'll be doing pretty soon, and then we'll probably be doing some more content around playoff schedules as it becomes more and more imperative, I guess, moving forward. Bruno says, what's going on with Batherson lately, and is Granlund done? We can throw those 2 in real quick, talk through. Drake Batherson, just 2 assists, no goals in his last 5 here, 17 minutes, just over. The underlying numbers look real bad here. In the 300s, shots per 60, individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Still on a 28-goal, 78-point pace because he's been pretty hot before. So some of this is just regression coming home for Batherson, but the underlying numbers are not encouraging either. I don't think he's dead in the water. Most likely he does get better at some point. They have been changing around the lines a lot as of late in Ottawa, and so maybe he's not meshing very well with his line mates. I don't think he's done, but probably the 78-point pace that he's on currently is still a bit rich, and probably I'm expecting him to pull back more into a 65 to 70-point pace rest of the season, and this is just a little bit of that regression coming for him here. And then Mikael Granlund, also just 2 assists, no goals in his last 5, still skating close to 21 minutes a night. Also has really bad underlying metrics across the board. He tends to do that and just live off sheer average time on ice and then efficiency, but definitely this is a bad stretch for him. And also a player that was overperforming earlier. He's on a 23-goal, 72-point pace right now. That's not like that far off where I'd have him as long as he's on the Sharks. But the thing is, it would not shock me whatsoever if Granlund is a pretty prime trade deadline target for some contending teams. And he'll go to a team, and there's probably no way he's on a top power play unless they have injuries. And so if that's the case, where he's just like a second-line left winger power play 2, you're going to get nothing out of Mikael Granlund for fantasy purposes. So I do think he'll rebound as long as he's in Sound as 8, but I don't think that he's necessarily a guy that I expect to continue to be a really good player for the entire season. Michael, are you covering Noah Hanifin? Worth pickup? I can throw Noah Hanifin in for a moment. He's got 2 goals, 5 points his last 5, 22.5 minutes average time on ice. 63rd shots per 60 amongst defensemen in these 5 games, 52nd individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 55th Corsi 4 per 60, and 33rd in on-ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Now on a 13-goal, 44-point pace. I'll double check, but I'm going to guess that that's not that far off where I had him in the early going, although I think I did project him with a little bit more power play time than he's seen so far. Yeah, I had him with 18 power play points, and that got him to 48 points as a pace for the season. A little bit more average time on ice than he's gotten as well. So yeah, he's hot right now. He's kind of regressing positively at the moment, but overall, I'm not super stoked about Noah Hannafin. The 12% on ice shooting percentage is probably a touch high. I had him as a 47% IPP player. He's at 40%, so maybe he gets a little bit better there. But the on ice shooting percentage, I think, will drop decently significantly to counteract that. So, what you see, I think, in terms of the total pace across his first 39 games here, 13 goal, 44 point pace, I think that's probably pretty accurate. 40 to 45 point player. He's hot right now. You can try to stay in the Flames there. It's a good week to do it. 4 games played for Vegas this week. Eric B. trying to decide what to do with Malkin in a deep 12-team/22 player points league. He hasn't been great, but averages 3.25 points. Top waiver forwards are usually around 3.5. Worth holding at all. Let's throw Malkin in there. They've been doing weird stuff with the power play, as you probably know. The last game here, I think most of the big guns were on the other line, but it was Karlsson and Letang on the back end with Malkin, but it was Kevin Hayes and Drew O'Connor as the other forwards, while Crosby, Raquel, Rust, and Bunting were all on the, I guess what you would call the top power play unit with Matt Grzelcyk on D. So it's a weird look for sure. He's still getting 18 plus minutes. He's got 3 points in the last 5. It's not terrible. The underlying metrics are pretty bad. 338 shots per 60, 305 individual scoring chances for per 60. But he is up there at 46 in on-ice scoring chances for per 60. So that's not terrible. 16 goals, 64 point pace. It's not that far off. I think you can expect him to be around what that average, you're saying 3.25 points in your league. I think you can consider him to probably be around that for the rest of the season. You'd like to see him back on power play 1 with Crosby, basically whatever power play that Crosby's on, obviously. And that'd be better for him, but I think that Malkin is fine. He's definitely not exciting, and his upside's pretty capped as long as he's away from Crosby on the power play. Matthew Barzal was dropped in my league. I hope I get him, or should I cancel my claim? No, I would hope that you get him as well. Barks, hey Nate, hope you feel better. What's your prognosis on Mark Stone? Could throw Mark Stone in. He's got 3 goals, 5 points in his last 5, 19.5 minutes. Average time on ice, 176 shots per 60, 109 individual scoring chances for per 60. 59th in on-ice scoring chances for per 60 is pretty good. 33 goal, 108 point pace. He's only played 25 games though. Like the shooting percentage is pretty high here, right? In the 20.8% shooting percentage. What did I have him for at the beginning of the year? Mark Stone I had for a 13.8. So you're getting an extra 7% right now there. 18.1% on ice shooting percentage is outlandish. I had him for 11.2 at the start of the season. Even if you factor in that he's playing with Eichel this year, which was not something I baked in a whole lot into my projections, I still think that comes back down a fair bit. The IPP is pretty much in line with what I had. He's getting more minutes as of late. I guess it's not that much, right? 19.5 versus, So it's not too much. A little closer to 19 before. I think that's about right. I think the 108 point pace is not going to stick around. The 33 goal pace is probably not going to stick around. I think you're probably looking at a guy who's going to be in the 25 goal range in terms of a pace from here on out, and probably going to be more in the point per game range from here on out. Just kind of eyeballing the numbers here. That's where I'd place him rest of season at the moment. Monster, hold Letang for rest of season, or is he a drop? Definitely don't think you have to hold him for the rest of season. Whether you should hang on to him for this moment in time is another question. It's a 16 goal, 38 point pace for Letang. Still skating good minutes, 25 plus in these 2 games that show up here. Obviously, he's missed some time. If what he's done for you so far has been above the kind of the drop line in your league, then I would hang on. But if it hasn't, then there might be some other options out there available to you. Like if it's a 10-team league, probably there are better options available to you. But in 12-team and above, Letang, I don't think you have to drop. Maybe there are better options that will come available, and he is that drop for you. That's definitely possible. He's kind of fringy in that way for me at the moment. Frank's thoughts on offering Reinhardt and Marner for Pasta and Uyghur, looking to upgrade shots and hits. I don't hate it. In a Cats league, Uyghur's a pretty special player, honestly, in a Cats league, right? I'm gonna throw him in here because I haven't actually checked in on his paces as of late. Only 2 assists in his last 5 here, but the underlines are not bad. It's an 8-goal, 42-point pace, but obviously a lot of Uyghur's contributions come via the bangs that he provides in your Bangers Cats leagues. I don't hate it, but I feel like you're giving up a little extra. If you, I guess it depends if you can afford to give up the shots to do this deal. And if you can, then maybe I would. If you don't need to give up that much to get it done, then maybe you're okay. Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence, I guess, is where I'm landing. I'm sorry that doesn't help you out, but I guess it depends to me how badly you need those shots and hits. There might be some better moves to make out there, I guess, is where I'm landing. Matt, I'm looking to move Konechny. Philly seems to have a weak playoff schedule. Who would be a target? I was thinking Miller, Bangers Cats format. Yeah, Miller would work. There's definitely some interesting players out there that you can look at. Just thinking about here I was thinking about and who actually has a playoff schedule, if that's kind of your aim here. For Konechny, you should be able to get a pretty decent haul. I don't think Nico Hischier, assuming you're weeks 22 through 24, and you can correct me if that's not correct. Philadelphia, sorry, I just want to compare. Yeah, Philadelphia's 9 games, 3 off nights, weeks 22 through 24. And then, I was going to say that a decent 1-for-1 would be New Jersey. You get a little bit more off nights with Nico Hischier. And I would take Hischier over Konechny rest of the season. I think that's probably a hot take for a lot of people, but I would personally do that. Trying to think who else might fit into that mold. Yeah, could you swing for a Philip Forsberg? I know he's been getting a lot of assists lately, but maybe you can get that. Nashville has 11 games in those 3 weeks. Potentially go that route. Matt Boldy, you might not want to do that, but I think I would also do that if you're like locked into just getting your playoff schedule back better. Then I think I would do that as well. Connor Bedard could be a decent look in some spots. He's got 5 points his last 5, starting to turn things around in that regard. Almost 20 minutes a night. There's definitely options there for you. You could even move for a defenseman like a Roman Josi, who I think is a pretty good buy low at the moment. There's definitely some options there. Michael Sakarinski Norris season. If this isn't it, he's gonna have a hard time winning it. That's for sure. Frank, thoughts on... Oh, we already got that one. Sidonian Knights. I think that's correct. What's your take on Stone? Get the sense he's just a pure efficiency player. Should I try to sell while he's hot? Yeah, we went over Stone, obviously, already. Probably your comment came in before I got to him, but it's a decent sell for sure. Depends, again, if you are already looking ahead to your playoff schedules, then Vegas plays 10 games, 3 off nights in the weeks 22 through 24, 12 games, 3 off nights in 23 through 25. So, yeah, I do think that this is probably the high point for him, and so from that perspective, it makes sense to sell. Might be worth checking out the playoff schedules of who you're looking to acquire if you're in playoff position, though. PB Stars, Patreon is worth it, fellas. Support our guys. Appreciate that. Tofu Tomo, Decord finally goes on IR the day after I drop for Askarov. But hey, Askarov gets as much help from his team as Decord does anyway. Goalies are killing my team in a Cats league. Yeah, that is a tough spot. Decord had been pretty good. Does seem like Seattle has been playing worse with Grubauer back there as well. So hopefully Decord is healthy. For what it's worth, like Decord was placed on retroactive IR. He's eligible to come off anytime. So it is really just a case of whenever he's healthy. But they've been pretty cryptic with the updates on Decord. That's got me a little bit worried. So it might honestly not be that big of a deal anyway. And Askarov is obviously playing out of his mind right now. Michael asks, Noah Dobson is a UFA this year. Curious to see if he resigns with the Islanders. Feel like if he went to a contending team, his fantasy relevancy would skyrocket. It would depend on the team, right? If he's getting pretty good deployment where he's at right now, and so I almost wouldn't want to change that part of it. Like 23 plus minutes, top power play, and his underlyings look really good, especially in the last little bit here. I do think Noah Dobson is going to have a much better rest of season. Frank, throw out some forwards names that could get Yossi in a trade. Oh boy, I could get Yossi in a trade. Let's see what we got. Yeah, I talked about Konechny, maybe Celebrini if somebody's high on that. Lucas Raymond, maybe Martin Necas. I would consider Mark Scheifele, maybe. Yeah, these would be the kind of names that I'm thinking about. Brandon Hagel, maybe. He's been hot, obviously. He's got a, what's his pace on the season? 93-point pace on the season. Somebody sold on him. Those would be just some quick names off the top of the dome here for you. SK93, hey Nate, what are your thoughts on Fiala? Do you think we see second half Fiala this year, or is he trending downwards? So yeah, Fiala is on the list. We can talk about him here for a minute. 2 goals, no assists in his last 5, over 19.5 minutes average time on ice. That has not been there all season long, so that's a big key portion of the puzzle for Kevin Fiala's fantasy relevance. 150 in shots per 60, 41st in individual Corsi 4 per 60 shot attempts, 186 individual scoring chances 4 per 60 in the 200s in the on-ice numbers. So that's not great. The season-long numbers don't look good. Under the hood, it's a little bit better. And the on-ice shooting percentage is obviously the crazy part with Kevin Fiala so far this year, 8.7% on-ice shooting percentage. That shouldn't continue for sure. He's better than that. Even, like, he's not playing with great players, but those are like fourth liner kind of on-ice shooting percentage numbers. So I do think that gets better at some point here. Item for a 12.45 on-ice shooting percentage at the start of the season. It is concerning to me who he's playing with the most as of late, I guess, and that he's not getting a lot of exposure to some of the bigger guys. He's been playing with Danault and Laferriere, which are fine players, but they're not really going to elevate his fantasy potential. They're obviously not even the best players on Los Angeles. So that's the problem with Fiala, but I do think he'll be better in the rest of the season, and that deployment is a good first step. Ian, just subscribe to the Patreon. Let's get to biz. Appreciate you. Michael says Quinn Hughes is back. Yes, Quinn Hughes is back, and I didn't see it until too late. Dealing with other stuff here, and so he is on my bench in Kickupful Tier 1. So I'm kind of rooting for him and kind of not rooting for him, I guess. I don't know. I'm rooting for a healthy game for Quinn Hughes. Bruno, thoughts on Tkachuk and Reinhart? Yeah, so Blake and I talked about Tkachuk and Reinhart in the flagship show yesterday, came out today. So you should definitely go check that out. We kind of dove in depth a little bit with Florida, and with those two players in particular, we dove in pretty deep on those two. So I think that's where you want to get most of your info. Cole's notes is Reinhart is regressing, but also the underlying numbers have really fallen off in a big way the last little bit, which is kind of concerning. But with a player that's been that good for that long, you're going to give him a lot of leash there. So I'm noticing it, but I'm not doing anything about it just yet. And Tkachuk, I feel like is probably actually a little bit of a buy low at the moment. Really depends, I guess, on your manager and how much stock they're putting into his cold streaks versus that one. He had like 1 week or 2 weeks where he had like 14 points in 5 games or something like that. So I think that's a big factor, but I do expect Tkachuk to be better, but I don't think he's going to get to the 90 plus point paces with the current amount of deployment he's getting. Chichimini, which team have the best playoff schedule? It does depend, obviously, on which weeks your playoffs are in. If it's weeks 22 through 24, then it's Minnesota, and I think actually Minnesota also would classify as the best. Detroit actually has a slightly better schedule. Dallas has more games played. Yeah, it depends what you're looking for. Vancouver's another one, weeks 23 through 25. So those would be some teams to look at for sure. Michael, did Kaliev's stock tank now that he's in New York Rangers? I mean, it was pretty much in the gutter already, so Yes, I mean, it's not a good place. Maybe, I guess, if he can get on the Zibanejad line and he can find some chemistry there, maybe. I don't know how likely that is. I'm going to have to see it to believe it at this point with Kaliev. It really feels like this is a player that generates offense, but has some major flaws in terms of his overall game that coaches just kind of totally hate. And so I'm not optimistic about his stock anymore. If you could redraft today, what round would take Yossi in basically Cacuffle scoring? If I was redrafting today, he's probably a third round pick, I would say. Yeah, I do expect him to be better. But yeah, maybe second round, not as much, having seen what we've seen out of Nashville this year. I think that's my final answer. Michael, what do you expect? What do you suspect is the injury Matthews has been dealing with? Think he misses more games this season? In just 2 games, he has 4 assists and a goal. Looks really good out there. Yeah, I honestly can't speculate on the injury. He was cross-checked kind of in the side and the back, and that kind of re-aggravated the injury. But also, like, when you get cross-checked like that, like, you twist your body, and it could re-aggravate any number of things. So I don't really don't want to speculate too much about that. Do I think he misses more games this season? I think there's obviously some sort of heightened possibility of that because they're going to want him to be as healthy as possible for the playoffs. But that being said, he has looked pretty fantastic. Like, he dives for an empty net goal in the first game back. Like, it really didn't seem like he was dealing with a whole lot of discomfort at any point in the 2 games that he got into. Played both sides of the back to back. Elliot Friedman saying on 32 Thoughts, he's like, Matthews is coming back. He's going to play all the back to backs. He didn't want to come back and do like some sort of load management scenario. So that seems to be out the window. So yeah, as long as he plays, he's going to be terrific. But I do think you have to bake in some risk that he misses more games if they're trying to get him right for playoffs. Frank is offering Reinhardt too much for Yossi. I think I would still take Reinhardt there, probably by a hair though. Should I trade Matthews? Obviously, depends what for. Um, I mean, you saw what he's able to do even while being quote unquote injured. So I don't know that you're going to get anything that's equal to the production you're going to get out of him. And yeah, it could be a scenario. There could be a scenario in which he like gets a re-injury or just decides to take some maintenance time in the middle of your playoffs and that sinks you. That's possible, and that is a scary thing to deal with for sure. But at the same time, he could also be the guy who wins you any given week and wins you your playoffs, wins you your fantasy title. And not a lot of players have that ability either. So you're kind of dealing with both ends. It is just pretty honestly a high risk, high reward scenario. And I don't think you should trade Matthews. I think you can explore it. And if you get a deal that you feel gives you, commensurate value back, you can. But I don't think anybody should trade Matthews based on what we know today. Tofu Tomo, Dahlin plus Thompson stack wins once again. I haven't checked the score in a minute. There it is. Tage Thompson on the power play from Dahlin and Peterka. Peterka's got 2 points. I thought Alex Tuck had a couple points in this one, but maybe they took his assists off the board. All right. Either way, good stuff there. What can I get for Natchez? I think obviously he's gone through a bit of a cold spell here, and so probably it's less than you could get previously when I was talking about him as a pretty obvious sell high candidate. That being said, I do think that there are some names that you can probably find out there that you can acquire that I still would do. You would want to aim pretty high though, right? Like you don't want to sell a guy who's demonstrated the potential to pop off for extended periods of time. So I would be aiming pretty high. Maybe maybe you can add somebody to Natchez to kind of tier up even more. You can get into those players that were maybe drafted in the second round or something like that. Or maybe you just want to kind of lock it in. I mean, maybe somebody's super worried about Matthews and you can make that deal happen, add something to Natchez to get Matthews. That's maybe a pipe dream, but worth exploring at least. So start high and work your way down if you have to, but definitely start high and see what you can get. Start with those players that were, drafted in the second round of your leagues and are performing as such. Willie Nylander is one that you could look at. He's been a little bit cooler as of late, so maybe you could get something done there. Maybe you have to add something to Natchez, but it's probably worth it. I think I'd like that. Michael asked Natchez from Miller. Yeah, JT Miller, that actually segues me in very nicely to the top of the list here. It's a good look. Miller has 5 points, all assists in his last 5 games, 18 and a half minutes average time on ice. He has been injured, and we don't, again, really know what that is exactly, but he has been limited. He's got a goal in the game tonight. Quinn Hughes assist there, so doing that for me on my bench, unfortunately, or in my IR, I guess. 57 shots for 60 in the last 5, so that's decent. That's not usually actually a component of Miller's game. That's a tough one, quite honestly. If you have good bangers weight, then maybe yeah, in your Natchez for Miller scenario there. Tofu Tomu does saying he does have a goal tonight. It's good stuff. All right. So yeah, JT Miller, it's similar to Matthews in that there seems to be some underlying issue that we don't really think is going away. Obviously, there's all the craziness that's happening in Vancouver right now, and talks of trades and stuff like that. I don't know what's happening there exactly, but I do like Miller. I think he's probably underperformed a little bit on the season so far, but the average time on ice being down is a big problem for his total point potential as well. So you got to factor that into when you're trying to figure out what the point pace should be. I think he's more of a point per game player, but obviously with fantastic bangs to go along with it. Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes, they'll kind of do together here. Hamilton's got just 2 assists in his last 5. Hughes has a goal, 2 assists, 3 points in his last 5. Both pretty close to 20 minutes, a shade under. But where Luke Hughes was previously really popping off with the underlying metrics, now it's flipped around and it's Dougie Hamilton that's doing that. 3rd in shots per 60, 4th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 5th in both on ice Corsi 4 per 60 and on ice scoring chances 4 per 60 in the last 5 games here. And on the season, Dougie Hamilton's underlying numbers look terrific. The average time on ice is lower for Dougie than I would like, but he is a pretty big buy low, assuming that he hangs on to power play 1. And that's the part that is really the trick. If you feel really confident that Dougie Hamilton is going to hang on to power play 1 all year long, then absolutely Dougie Hamilton is big time buy low. But if that's a risk, him coming off the top power play is a risk that you can't accept, then you shouldn't go out and do that. That being said, at this exact moment in time, if he continues to put up these kind of underlying numbers, like the points are going to come and they're going to come in bunches. Obviously, we know that New Jersey is a team that can put up points in a hurry. Luke Hughes on the other side of that, he was hot. He's cooled off significantly here, both in terms of the point production and in the underlying stats. And so I am kind of left in a spot where I'm waiting for Luke Hughes to get power play 1 once again. If he's not going to give me those big time underlying numbers, it's hard to keep rostering him when the shots aren't there. He doesn't hit, he doesn't really block, he doesn't do anything other than put the puck in the back of the net. And if he's not doing that, then he's really not doing anything for you. So tons of potential with Luke Hughes, but he's still kind of floating around the fringe player scenario here, albeit one with massive, massive potential. Troy Terry next up. He's got 4 goals, 7 points in his last 5 because he was against me in the head-to-head streamer deathmatch, and Blake chose him, but that's fine. I love Troy Terry. It's just over 19 minutes average time on ice. The key thing for me, honestly, this year with Troy Terry is that Greg Cronin has finally realized that Troy Terry is that dude and is playing him as such. I love to see it. 91st shots per 60, 131 individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 186 Corsi 4 per 60, 126 on a scoring chances 4 per 60. It's a 29 goal, 69 point pace for Troy Terry on the season now, which is pretty nice. 75% IPP, 13.7% shooting percentage, and 9.4% on ice shooting percentage. And I think that probably lines up with where I had him. My initial projections, 25 and a half goals, 61 points. That was based on 18 and a half minutes average time on ice, so he's doing better than that. I had him at a 72% IPP. He's at 75, so we're in the wheelhouse there. The on-ice shooting percentage is a touch low. The shooting percentage is a touch high versus what I had projected at the start of the season. Yeah, I think he could honestly be even better. He could be a 70 to 75 point player rest of the season. Wouldn't blink an eye. His teammate there, Jackson Lacombe, 2 goals, 4 points in his last five, over 22 and a half minutes average time on ice, 33rd shots per 60, 82nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 82nd as well in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, and 68th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. He's made himself a fixture on the top power play there for Anaheim. They did do some weird stuff in this last game, but I believe he was still on the Troy Terry unit, which is the one that I want all my players to be on if I'm thinking about them for fantasy. I do like Jackson Lacombe in this current setup. The good minutes he's getting, the good power play that he's on. I like all of that. I am completely unconvinced that it lasts, even another week. It could last all season, and so it's really just a guy that you're like, wow, I'm getting great production out of this guy. I didn't think I was going to get anything out of, and you just hang on to him and let it happen to you for a while until it goes away, and then you drop him and you don't feel bad about it. So that's where I'm at with Jackson Lacombe. Jared McCann, definitely one that people want to know about. Yeah, this is this is what that's paining me personally. Down to 17 and a half minutes average time on ice in the last five with only 2 goals to show. 140th in shots per 60, 29th in shot attempts per 60, 245th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, not great, and in the 300s in the on ice numbers, which is really not great. So what do we do with Jared McCann? Even strength, he's been playing with Stevenson and Burakovsky. He is still on the Vince Dunn, Jaden Schwartz, Stevenson, Oliver Bjorkstrand power play. It's a decent spot to be. Really, I wanted to see this average time on ice stay high for a while there. He was getting 18 plus, closer to 19. And now it's back down to 17 and a half, and I don't like that. Maybe I should double check that he's just in the last little bit. He didn't miss some time in any individual game, and I'm not kind of misspeaking there. No, it has been pretty much that's the case, yeah. So yeah, that's the part with Jared McCann. Now they do play tonight, so we'll probably go and negate whatever I'm about to say here. But overall, I still like the player a lot. This is a player who's typically insanely efficient and has been for multiple seasons at this point. Like, it's not just one season where he's been efficient, and so we're like projecting him to be efficient again because he did it that one time. No, this is a player with a long history of being super, super efficient. I had him projected at a 76% IPP. He's at 68% now, so he's got maybe 8% more of the goals scored while he's been on the ice that he should have a hand in so far. 12.2% on ice shooting percentage. That's pretty close. I had him at 11.9, and a 12.9 shooting percentage. I had him at 14.1. So I do think he's run a little cold here. I do think he can do a little better, but he is going to need some more minutes to really unlock that. I do think it's there, though, for Jerry McCann. I don't like the underlying numbers the last little bit, but he is still chucking pucks, and I like that. It's really just, in my mind, if the teammates can support what Jerry McCann can do even a little bit more. He is a guy who can do it on his own, but he needs a little bit more from his teammates to really achieve some more. In the meantime, though, I think he's a fully rosterable player. I don't think you should be dropping Jared McCann in 12-team leagues. 10-team leagues, it's much more of a conversation, but in more standard 12-team leagues, I'm not dropping Jared McCann. Seth Jones, 1 goal, 3 points in his last five, 23 minutes average time on ice, 48 shots per 60 in the hundreds in the on ice numbers. Seth Jones, I honestly don't think I have a whole lot to say about him here. It's just a spot where I think he is what he is. It's a guy who's going to be on the top power play. He's going to skate a ridiculous amount of minutes, and he's going to wind up, he's on, in the 24 games he's played, he's on a 10-goal, 44-point pace. That feels kind of about right to me. Yeah, I think that's pretty much exactly what Seth Jones is in this version of the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about Timo Meier. Blake and I did talk about Timo Meier, so you should go back and check that out. Cole's notes here is Timo Meier, lots of potential. Underlying numbers, while not terrific as of late on the season, are absolutely, top of the line across the board. Really, the problem is the lowered ice time. And the fact that he's not on the top power play and hasn't been for quite some time, and the Devils' power play is running really well, and so there's not really any reason for him to get there. So Timo Meyer theory is that he's a fully rosterable player in my mind. Again, similar to McCann, not dropping him in 12-team leagues. Maybe in 10-team leagues you could entertain it, but even there, I'm probably hanging on. He brings a lot in terms of shots and hits as well, so it's not just the point production that you have to rely on with Timo Meyer, which is a nice feature. And then there is the potential that, if somebody does get injured from that top group, that he should be the next guy up in terms of the top power play, and that would really potentially unlock a huge amount of extra point scoring for him. He has been very efficient on power plays in the past, both in New Jersey and in his previous stop in San Jose. So I still like Timo Meyer. I think he's got a lot of potential. If you can't afford to wait for that potential, maybe you can look at trading him off. But if you can, then I would, because I do think all it takes is one bounce his way, and he could be on top power play and being a league winner come playoff time. Matthew Barzal, 4 assists his last 20 minutes average time on ice, 109 shots per 60, 47th in shot attempts per 60, 75th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, first in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60, and third in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. On the season, Barzal has played only 19 games, only has 10 points. It's a 13-goal, 43-point pace. He is second in Corsi, 4 per 60, and fourth in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60 on the season. 48% IPP is actually ridiculous. That's not going to sustain. He is definitely due for some positive regression on that front. I had him for 73% IPP, so you can do the math. It should be much, much better. 6% shooting percentage. I had him for 10.4. On ice shooting percentage, 8.4. I had him for 10.4. So massive positive regression coming across the board for Matthew Barzal. I think, honestly, Matthew Barzal is probably, just in terms of the raw numbers under the hood and where I had him projected, all things considered, he is probably the biggest buy low on the face of fantasy hockey right now. Decent playoff schedule as well, so you're not really too worried about that. I love picking up some Matthew Barzal at the moment. Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley. Guenther has just 2 assists in his last 5 games. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points for Logan Cooley in his last 5. Guenther's just over 16 minutes. Logan Cooley's about 18 minutes and a quarter there. Guenther is 81st in shots per 60, 10th in shot attempts per 60, but down at 254th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On-ice numbers are curious as well. 49th in Corsi, 4 per 60, but 172nd in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Logan Cooley, 177th in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. 101st in shots per 60, 191 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Last 5 for Logan Cooley. The big thing here for me is I think that Dylan Guenther is immensely talented. I think this is a guy who's going to be a 40-goal scorer in the NHL. I think he's going to have point-per-game seasons in the NHL. Logan Cooley is a bit more of the distributor, the facilitator, if you will. But both of these guys have these massive on-ice shooting percentages, over 15%. Those are not going to sustain. And Dylan Guenther, you're seeing some of that regression come through here. Logan Cooley is getting a lot of minutes, which is kind of helping to balance out the regression, and that's nice for him, but is also due for some negative regression there. So I don't think these guys will sustain their current 72 and 71 point paces respectively, but I do think that both of them are also decently likely to get more ice time. Logan Cooley, it's happening right now. Dylan Guenther, it could happen where he gets another bump in ice time. They just finally decide to play their best players a bit more, and that works really well in his favor in terms of generating more offense. So yeah, there are paths for them to maintain this point pace, but basically they have to maintain a higher average time on ice. Otherwise, I do anticipate some negative regression coming. And Dylan Guenther at 16 minutes, you're just going to have stretches like this where he goes cold for a bit, and he'll have other stretches where he pops off for like 5 goals in 5 games. That's probably just going to be the way it is for the rest of the season. All right, let's get back to the comments. What's up with Timo Meyer, trade or hold? So I talked about him there. I think I addressed that one. Frank Voronkov or Zetterlund as a 4th left wing? Voronkov pretty clearly for me there. Miller, 2 goals now. All right, let's go back to the game here. 3-1 Vancouver. Miller has 2 goals and an assist. Excellent stuff from him. Jonathan Lekaramaki has a goal and an assist as well. Interesting stuff there. All right. I started saying Montembeau, unfortunately, in one spot, so that's not going to work well. Maybe Dobish is going to be the guy moving forward. Could be. Miller popping off. I think Montembeau is going to get some competition from that Dobish guy more and more. Yeah, I agree. I mean, all that they've gotten out of Dobish so far has been terrific, so they're going to give him a little bit more, at least as long as he can keep it going. Hey, Nate, thoughts on Schmaltz rest of the season? Would you prefer Terry over him? At the moment, so Nick Schmaltz had been doing this thing where he was generating more offense, and I was pretty into that, generating more individual offense, I should say. That's fallen off as of late. He's still getting tons and tons of minutes, but now Troy Terry is too. I think I would lean Troy Terry at this moment in time. You can call that recency bias or whatever you want, but I think at the moment I would go with Troy Terry between the two. Michael says it's just not Timo time yet. We can be patient. We should try anyway. Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch back to back here. 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points in the last 5 games for Tage Thompson before this game that's ongoing right now. I think he's only got the 1 goal in this one. Is that right? Yeah, 1 goal, 4 shots. Good stuff from Tage Thompson. Alex Tuch, who has a goal in this game as well. He has 3 goals in his last 5, but no assists. 19 minutes average time on ice for Tage Thompson, just over 18 for Alex Tuch, 114 shots for 60, 231st individual scoring chances 4 per 60 for Tage Thompson, 240th in Corsi 4 per 60, and 215th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. That's not great, but the puck has been going in, so hard to blame him for that. Overall, I think that I'm pretty okay with where Tage Thompson is. It's a 42 goal, 77 point pace on the season, 70% IPP, 17.8% shooting percentage, probably a touch high. But he could also, cancel that out with some good shot volume, which he usually does do. 13.4% on ice shooting percentage is probably, it might be a touch high, but again, it's not too crazy. And in the last little bit, as you see, he's been getting a little bit more ice time, which could cancel out some of that effect as well. So overall, I think what you see is what you get. 40 to 45 goal, 75 to point per game, point pace for Tage Thompson rest of the season feels pretty good. On the Alex Tuch side, it's a little bit more difficult to figure out what to do here because they have been moving these lines around. Tuch really hasn't been on the top power play unit at all for the vast majority of the season, which is just mind-blowing to me. Got to get Jack Quinn out there. How many points does Jack Quinn have on the season? I'm going to really digress here. Jack Quinn, okay, he's got 5 points in the last 5 games. That's makes a total of 14 in 33 games on the season. But yeah, let's get Jack Quinn out on top power play over Alex Tuch. Make it make sense, Lindy Ruff. 241st shots per 60, 330th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 367 on ice Corsi 4 per 60, and 371 on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. That's pretty atrocious stuff from Alex Tuch as of late. I don't really know what to say about Alex Tuch so far. We have enough of a sample size on Tuch that I feel pretty confident in saying what kind of player he is. But when he's playing with Ryan McLeod and JJ Peterka on a second line, when he's on the second power play with seemingly no hope of being released from that hell, you have to think to yourself that Alex Tuch is just going to have a lowered ceiling. Like right now on the season, he's on a 25 goal, 57 point pace. I don't honestly know how much more I can project out of him. Maybe 60, 65 if he gets some better line mates here and there. Really, Alex Tuch is stuck in this wasteland where you have to have power play 1 to matter much more than he already does. That being said, still like the player, just needs the deployment to make it happen. Mike Matheson, 3 assists in his last 5, 25 minutes a night. 35th in shots per 60, 161st in individual scoring chances 4 per 60, last 5 games amongst all defensemen, 69th in Corsi 4 per 60, nice, 57th in scoring chances 4 per 60. Where I'm at with Matheson right now is Lane Hudson has taken over the top power play. Doesn't seem like he's going to be giving it back anytime soon. at the moment anyway. And so where I'm left at with Matheson is I think this is a player who's good enough and will produce enough to be on your roster as kind of like a fourth defenseman. But realistically, I think you can be in a spot where you just take that from Mike Matheson. And then if he does get power play one for whatever reason, Hudson injury, he runs into a wall and can't play these kinds of minutes anymore, whatever the reason. If Matheson does get on top power play, then it's just kind of like found money. And I think everyone is really off of Mike Matheson at the moment, and I'm not like completely off of him. I think that he's a perfectly serviceable third or fourth defenseman in a lot of fantasy lineups. Montreal plays 11 games in weeks 22 through 24, so he has a good schedule there. I'm not going to be mad at that. So overall, I think that Mike Matheson is actually a player that you probably want on your teams right now at cost, if that makes sense. At the cost to acquire, he's probably a buy. Marco Rossi, 3 goals, 9 points in his last 5 games here. Again, a player that Blake and I talked about on the flagship show, so go check that out. Over 20 minutes, he's been skating top line minutes, 31 goals, 76-point pace on the season. Been running quite hot in terms of the shooting percentage, especially 21.1% shooting percentage. 74% IPP does feel a little bit hot as well. 12.4% on ice shooting percentage, maybe a little bit hot, but not unreasonable for the kind of top line exposure he's been getting. Altogether, I think that Rossi's a good player and probably will be rosterable for most of, if not the rest of the season, especially with that really nice playoff schedule that Minnesota has in your fantasy playoffs. So there's that aspect of it too. The big question for me is if he gets bumped off the top power play when Kaprizov comes back and everybody's healthy. My guess is that yes, he does. And so that will obviously take a big bite out of his fantasy potential. But I still think that if he is getting Kaprizov exposure at even strength, that might be enough to keep him fantasy relevant. Joel Eriksson Ek from the same team here, 1 goal, 4 points in his last 4. 20 and a half minutes average time on ice, 64th shots per 60, 61st individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 in the mid 100s in the on ice numbers. It's only 26 games played for Joel Eriksson Ek, but it's a 19 goal, 54-point pace on the season. Low numbers in terms of the efficiency. Last year he had kind of high numbers in terms of his efficiency, so maybe he's getting some regression season by season now instead of within the individual games of each season the way it should be. Overall, I like Joel Eriksson Ek. I think they are probably going to try to split these lines. I've talked about it a lot. Once Kaprizov is back, play Eriksson Ek with Boldy and play Rossi with Kaprizov. That's my guess at this point. If that comes true, that probably limits Joel Eriksson Ek's absolute ceiling potential just a little bit, because obviously you want Kaprizov exposure if you can get it. The guy's one of the top 5 offensive talents in the league right now. So that's kind of the problem there. But as long as he's on top power play, I think Joel Eriksson Ek is plenty fine player that you're going to want on your rosters, especially again come that playoff schedule for Minnesota. The bigger question is, are you valuing him at what he did last year, or did you have a little bit more sober expectations for him this year? I still think that there's a lot left here, and I do think that Joel Eriksson Ek is a buy at the moment. Kevin Fiala, we talked about already. So let's move on to Noah Dobson. 1 assist in his last 5 games, just over 23 minutes average time on ice. 4th in shots per 60, 16th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. 1st Corsi, 4 per 60. 8th on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Dobson has absolutely been lighting up the underlying numbers. 4th in shots per 60 amongst all defensemen on the season as well. It's only resulted in a 10-goal, 41-point pace so far on the season. But I do think that better days are ahead for Dobson, much like I said about Matthew Barzal. I think Noah Dobson is one of the bigger buy lows amongst all defensemen at the moment. Valery Nichushkin, I think he's still currently injured. I didn't see any new updates today. But 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 3, over 18 minutes, average time on ice, 30th in shots per 60, but 277th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. When you only have a 3-game sample, you'll get some pretty weird stuff like that. So that is why I try to take a little bit bigger of a sample when doing these. yeah, overall, I think that Nichushkin is probably, a 65-point player. The thing with Colorado, like I've said a million times, is whoever's on the top power play gets this massive boost, and whoever's not gets a massive downgrade. And so they tend to rotate through their guys in that regard. So you just kind of have to take the good with the bad, and yeah, it might come home to roost where Nichushkin is not on the top power play in your fantasy playoffs when you really need him, and that's kind of just a risk that you're going to have to accept if you're going to roster him. So take from that what you will, but that's the scenario that you're dealing with Nichushkin. I think honestly, if Nichushkin played the full like 20-minute a night power play one, line one treatment every single night for the rest of the season, I think he's probably a point per game player. But I have very serious doubts that he'll actually do that. Matthew Knies, 4 goals, 6 points in his last 5 games. Actually, all of those points are coming in just the last 2 games. 19 minutes average time on ice, 52nd. That was an interesting affectation I put on that one. 52nd in shots per 60, 30th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 62nd in Corsi 4 per 60, and 78th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Seemed like when Matthews came back, Knies really got a jolt, and it is resulting in some really good production from him here on the season. Like, he's only 271st in shots per 60 on the season. He's got to a 32 goal pace via a 21.7% shooting percentage. That I don't think is real, but if he can sustain some higher shot production, then yeah, maybe he can sustain a 30 goal pace for the rest of the season. That's really the question you're asking yourself with Matthew Knies. He's not going to get top power play probably when they have everybody healthy. He hasn't the last 2 games here. But you can argue that it's better for him to just have Matthews back and have Matthews and Marner playing around him. So overall, I'm still into Matthew Knies, especially in bangers leagues because he does throw the body around. But I think that probably your best case scenario is what he's already doing for you. 32 goal, 52 point pace on the season. I don't think it gets much better than that without power play one. Him just like unseating, I don't know, Riley or somebody for power play one. That's probably the only scenario in which things actually get better for Matthew Knies rest of season. Last one on the list from the requests in the Discord server, Zach Werenski. 1 goal, 10 points in his last 5, over 26 minutes, average time on ice, first in shots per 60, second in shot attempts per 60, second in individual scoring chances 4 per 60, third in on ice Corsi 4 per 60, 10th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. On the season, pretty much the same story. It's a 25 goal, 92 point pace for Zach Werenski on the season now. Yeah, pretty ridiculous stuff from Werenski so far. And pretty clearly, Columbus is a much better offensive environment than any of us thought was possible coming into the season. And you have to account for that. Like, I had Werenski projected for 16 goals and 61.5 points at the start of the season. And that was when we all thought that nobody was going to score any points. I had the top point projection at 59 points of any of the forwards for Columbus. And we're obviously going to get multiple players who are going to crush that with what they've been able to put out there so far, Marchenko and Monahan especially. So now that we have to, reevaluate what the scenario actually is, like I had Werenski at a 10.9% on ice shooting percentage, and he's at 11.3% on ice shooting percentage. I don't think that that's really going to change that much. I had him projected at 24 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice. He's getting 26 minutes and 50 seconds or 30 seconds. Wow. Can't do the math. Roughly 26 and a half minutes average time on ice. That's what he's gotten so far this year. So had another boost there. And his rates really haven't suffered with the additional minutes, which is something that you might look for. So all that to say, like, you do have to adjust, even if I had used my baseline expectation for what the Blue Jackets were coming into the season. Just adding those extra minutes alone would have pushed Werenski into the 65 point range, 65 plus point range. And now you add on top of that that we really can't expect that this is just a much better team and a much better offensive environment than what we anticipated before the season started. And now all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who does have 75 to 80, point per game potential in this season, in this current iteration of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I truly believe that Zach Werenski is a top 5 fantasy defenseman, probably top 3. Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar would be the only two that I could conclusively, and even Hughes, I don't know if it's conclusively take over Werenski right now. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Top 3 fantasy defenseman, rest of season, Zach Werenski. All right, let's get back to the comments, and then I'm going to get out of here. What the heck is going on with J-Rob's minutes? He'll go from 20 to 15 minutes, and I think he does better with less minutes. Yeah, it's been that. That's kind of been the same scenario all season long. Yeah, in the last game he had 20 minutes and only had the one shot on goal. The game before he had 15 minutes. Like 2 games before he had only 15 minutes, just over, and he put together 5 points in those 2 games. So yeah, it's kind of a weird scenario, but that is just kind of how Dallas plays. It really does depend on each individual night, what Peter DeBoer is feeling with his team, who he puts out there on any given night and gives those minutes to. And unfortunately, that's just something that you have to live with if you are a Jason Robertson rosterer at this point. In the end, like, it's averaging out to 18 minutes a night, which is not terrible. But yeah, I think that I'm still betting on him as like a point per game player rest of season, but I can't bet on him for really anything more. Tofu Tomo, Sabres game, empty seats, half the fans there in a red sweater. Yeah, who are they playing again? Oh yeah, the Capitals. Yeah, it's a tough look. The Sabres haven't been good for a while, and the season has not gone according to plan. So they need something to go right. The fans will come for sure. Buffalo is a sports town for sure, but they are probably justifiably pretty sick of what they've seen in the last little bit. Michael, I'm just sad that next season Werenski will be drafted much higher in fantasy leagues. This is true, but there will be other players that we are in on that we'll be bringing to you that you'll get your shares of. It happens every year. Players we like, they pop off, and everybody gets on the bandwagon, but we're on to the next one. CG, to clarify my question earlier, was wondering about my decision to bench Panarin given 3 games and his opponents compared to Lehkonen or Drouin with 4 games played. It feels bad. Yeah, that's a good question. Panarin has been cold. He's playing Dallas, New Jersey, Vegas this week, which is a bit of a murderer's row for sure. Everything going on with the Rangers right now. It's a good question from that regard. Colorado's playing Florida, Chicago, Minnesota, Winnipeg, so not exactly an easy slate outside of Chicago for Colorado either. I think I would default to Panarin there, but it is kind of a default. Yeah, I think that's the way I would have gone. I just don't have a lot of faith in Lehkonen or Drouin. Talked about the power play situation for those kind of players. Be on again, off again. So, yeah. Jordan, which player do you prefer rest of season, Nyes or Laf? I'm assuming that's Lafreniere, not Laferriere. And Kyrou or Stamkos. Wow. I think Lafreniere is more talented than Matthew Nyes, probably, at least at this stage in their career. But does he ever get power play 1 to really, take off from that step? Do the Rangers just continue to be a tire fire for the rest of the season that holds everybody down? Questions you have to weigh. I think I'd take Nyes at the moment just to see how far this could go. But I do have it in the back of my mind that Lafreniere, I think, is the better player as of today. Kyrou versus Stamkos. So again, if your playoff schedules mean something to you, Nashville plays 11 games in weeks 22 through 24, and the Rangers only play 8 with 2 off nights, so it's a big difference between the two. Or sorry, not the Rangers. Got to go to St. Louis here. Why did I think that Kyrou was on Rangers? That was bad. Kyrou, 10 games played, only 1 off night though. So there is a little bit of difference there between Stamkos and Kyrou. But Kyrou's playing a lot better and playing a lot better under Jim Montgomery specifically. And that's got to count for something, right? New coach comes in, he's absolutely popping off. Second in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 amongst all forwards in the last 5 games, 6 points to show for it. I think you have to take Kyrou at the moment. CG Evison, Coach of the Year, no question. Hard to argue with that at the moment. Thoughts on Marchenko rest of season? I can throw him in here. Kirill Marchenko. He's got 4 goals, 6 points. His last 5, over 21 and a half minutes average time on ice. Ridiculous. Double digits in all of the good stuff there, so we like to see that. It's a 35-goal, 88-point pace for Marchenko at the moment. 65% IPP, 14.3% shooting percentage, 13.6% on-ice shooting percentage. Honestly, I don't have a strong reason to think that Marchenko is going to be much worse than this. Maybe he comes back down a little bit to, the 75 to 80 point range as a pace rest of season, but if he's going to get 21 minutes, maybe not. I'm a big fan of the player, and I don't have any reason to think it's not legit. Michael says J-Rob is last season's Tage and Werenski is last season's Dobson. Yeah, maybe. Sorry, late joining. Did you already go over Jamie Benn already by any chance? We have not, but we can. Jamie Benn, 3 goals, 6 points his last 5. 8th in shots per 60. First individual scoring chances for per 60. Absolutely blowing up right now. Over 18 minutes with the injuries they have there. For me, Jamie Benn is in a spot right now where he's getting a lot of minutes, which is not something he's really ever gotten. Not ever, but last 2 or 3 seasons he hasn't really gotten in Dallas. Now that he's getting it and he's performing really well, I really like Jamie Benn. Do I think that it lasts much longer? Definitely when players start to come back. I don't think it lasts. So that's the problem for me with Jamie Benn, is I don't think it lasts, but I am going to enjoy it while it's here. If you do find a way to trade high on it, I would explore that option. But yeah, I think that it's a good look for Jamie Benn right now. The underlying suggests that he's doing the right things to generate these kind of points, but I can't envision it lasting too much longer. Till Futomo, appreciate the live stream. Appreciate you. Also, if you get the chance, Ekblad, wondering if he's still a hold while power play 1 on Florida. Yeah, basically my calculus on that situation is that Ekblad is a hold as long as he's on the top power play, and you drop him as soon as he's off. 11th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. 2nd in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60 in the last 5 games. Florida as a whole has just been really cold as of late in terms of goal scoring, so I'm not going to sweat it too much. Jordan, thanks for your help, Nate. Feel better soon. Appreciate that. Sidonian also saying, thanks for your help. Keep an eye out for back spasms after your knee heals. I do appreciate that. Actually, I have had some, I don't know if they're spasms exactly, but some lower back stuff going on since I've been hobbling with the knee. Insiders now saying Murky going to Rangers. Murky. Who's Murky? Am I that far out of touch that I don't know who Murky is? Oh, okay. Kyrou. Next comment. Kyrou to the Rangers. That would be interesting for sure. It'd be a good spot for him. Could play with Panarin maybe. Be interesting to see, but I don't know how they'd make that work either with the contracts and everything. Carter asks, what are your expectations for Durzi when he returns? I don't think that Durzi takes over top power play, and so he's not really been a player that's been efficient outside of power play time. So I'm not really expecting much out of Sean Durzi when he comes back. I do expect he'll get a lot of minutes. I think he'll help the team. But he'll be a pretty fringy player, Dmitry Orlov-esque maybe, to kind of draw a quick comparison there. That would be kind of my baseline as of right now. Frank, would you agree Brady Tkachuk is the best shot/hits player in the league? It'd be pretty hard to contest that at the moment. I mean, Kiefer Sherwood is shooting a decent amount and hitting out of his mind, so maybe you could argue that depending on how much you want to weight one versus the other. But I think that's a fair statement. All right, I think we made it through everything that we had on the list here, so I appreciate everybody hanging out. But yeah, that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. I hope you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you saw today, came from Natural Stat Trick, a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band. They're there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.